And there wasn't a lad within 50 miles who didn't know Rachel. Jacob takes command of the situation. The beautiful young ewe lamb Rachel arrives with Laban's sheep. Jacob turns into a real man's man. Jacob flexes his muscles and impressively rolls the stone away. But despite the warmth of this greeting, Uncle Laban is about to enroll Jacob in a 20-year degree in trickery, chicanery, and duplicity. Laban is about 5 steps ahead of Jacob. Rachel's eyes sparkled. In fact, everything about Rachel sparkled. Laban could see Jacob was love-struck by Rachel. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me?" And with this night complete, Jacob's sin had returned upon his own head. This is a heartbreaking account of Leah's desperate search for love. The joy of becoming a mother is crushed against the heartache of a loveless marriage. So Leah would focus on praising God. Genesis 29 verse 1. So Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. And he looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it, for out of that well they watered the flocks. A large stone was on the well's mouth. Now all the flocks would be gathered there, and they would roll the stone from the well's mouth, water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the well's mouth. Jacob was 77 years old when he left his father's house. Given the longer lifespan of those days, he was equivalent to a 45-year-old today. The description of Haran as the land of the east is biblically and geographically interesting. We would call it more north than east. In effect, this was the westward portion of the Mesopotamian people of the east, the western extent of the people of the land of Shinar. The Genesis 11 eastward migration of the people after the flood is likely implied in this description, people of the east. The well covering was likely in place to discourage and deter the gathering of wild animals, whose presence would both befoul the well and increase the likelihood of predation of the flocks of sheep. Verse 4, And Jacob said to them, "My brethren, where are you from?" And they said, "We are from Haran." Then he said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" And they said, "We know him." So he said to them, "Is he well?" And they said, "He is well. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep." The shepherds Jacob encounters are likely young men from Haran. This was a young man's job. Terah had 3 sons, Haran, Nahor, and Abraham. Haran was a town likely named after Terah's son. These youngsters are likely closely related to Jacob. But Jacob was searching for the town of Nahor, nearby to Haran, evidently named after Terah's other son. "Do you know Laban?" Jacob inquires, "the son of Nahor?" Actually, Laban was the grandson of Nahor. Bethuel was his father. It seems, just like Isaac, Bethuel was overshadowed by both his more famous father and flamboyant son. The small-town family people of Nahor and Haran knew each other very well, and everyone certainly knew Laban. And there wasn't a lad within 50 miles who didn't know Rachel, the most beautiful, eligible maiden in the region. In all likelihood, Jacob had no map. He was just travelling by the seat of his pants. Jacob's first 2 inquiries are barely disguised attempts at orientation and direction. Their answers confirm he's near his journey's end. Jacob then inquires as to the health of Laban. "Is he well?" he asks at the well. They reply at the well, "He is well." Wells and water being symbols for the Holy Spirit. It's important to notice, in contrast with Eliezer's example, Jacob never seeks God's leading in his search for a bride. Rather, it's the shepherds that point Jacob to Rachel, coming with her sheep. The root of Rachel's name means ewe, or female sheep. But it seems this is a special type of female sheep. The root word behind Rachel is used only 4 times in the Bible, most famously in Isaiah 53:7. Like a sheep, a Rahel, before its shearer is silent. The Bible records numerous important well meetings. Hagar met the living God at a hidden wilderness well. Eliezer found Rebekah at a well. Isaac met Rebekah at a well. Jacob here meets Rachel at a well. Moses meets Zipporah at a well. And Jesus famously met the Samaritan woman at a well. Interestingly, both Haran and Nahor have elements within their names that indicate a dry, hot, scorched land. Certainly a region you'd want to have access to a reliable well. Verse 7, Then he said, Look, it is still high day. It is not time for the cattle to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go, and feed them. But they said, We cannot, until all the flocks are gathered together, and they have rolled the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. Now, it isn't 100% clear what's going on with this exchange. I've got a bunch of questions. Why are the shepherd lads lingering around and not getting their work done? Why do they need some other group to roll away the stone? Is it some legal prohibition stopping them moving the stone? Maybe they didn't have the authorization to do so and could only water their flock after the well owner's sheep were attended to. Or is it possible they were stalling till the prettiest girl in the region came out with her sheep? They certainly knew instantly it was her coming from a distance. And why does Jacob care how efficient the shepherds are? They're not his workers. The Bible's economy of words leaves these questions unanswered. What is certain? Jacob takes command of the situation. Perhaps he was trying to impress Laban's daughter as she arrived at the well. Maybe he wanted the young lads moved along so he could have a private discourse with Laban's daughter. Verse 9. Now while he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. The beautiful young ewe lamb Rachel arrives with Laban's sheep, and 77-year-old Jacob is instantly besotted by her beauty. It's surely love at first sight. Jacob has never seen a more beautiful woman. Verse 10. And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Under the spell of her beauty, and don't miss that Jacob notices the obvious wealth of Laban, given the size of her flock. Jacob turns into a real man's man. The lads together, for whatever reason, couldn't move the heavy rock. But Jacob flexes his muscles and impressively rolled the stone away, then continues in labour to water Rachel and Laban's sheep. No longer a mama's boy, now a man's man. Verse 11. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. Oh, no. Ah, Jacob, you were doing so well. But real men don't cry. He's back to being a mama's boy. Sadly, Jacob offers no thanksgiving to God, as Eliezer had done when he experienced the providence of God. Eliezer worshipped the Lord. Jacob flexed his muscles. A perfect contrast between living in the Spirit versus living in the flesh. Verse 12. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative, and that he was Rebekah's son. So she ran and told her father. There are similarities in this account with the finding of Isaac's bride, Rebekah. Both meetings occur in Shinar. Both meetings occur at a well, likely even the same well. Both meetings appear to be happenstance, but the hand of God was involved in the circumstances of both meetings. Both Rebekah and Rachel run to tell Laban once introductions were completed, and Laban immediately ran to meet both men at the well. Both Jacob and Eliezer were warmly welcomed into Laban's house. But I think the differences are perhaps more interesting. Jacob finds Rachel himself, whereas Rebekah was found by the servant Eliezer. Jacob is impressed by Rachel and Laban's wealth. Rebekah and Laban were impressed by Isaac and Eliezer's wealth. Jacob worked hard to impress Rachel, but it was Rebekah who worked hard impressing Eliezer. Rachel watches and observes the actions of Jacob, whereas Eliezer watched and observed the generous actions of Rebekah. Jacob waters Rachel's animals, whereas Rebekah watered Eliezer's animals. Jacob waits a month to propose, whereas Eliezer immediately proposes and won't even eat till he has Rebekah's answer. Verse 13. Then it came to pass, when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, Surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a month. There does appear to be a genuine warmth in this greeting. Perhaps Laban could see his long-lost sister's eyes when he looked at Jacob. Surely you are my bone and flesh. You look just like my beautiful sister. It's been 97 years since last he saw Rebekah. But despite the warmth of this greeting, Uncle Laban is about to enroll Jacob in a 20-year degree in trickery, chicanery, and duplicity. Jacob's always considered himself to be the shrewdest scallywag in the district. He's about to learn from the doctor of double-crossing. Laban is a true scoundrel. He's deceitful, a rascal rogue. He'll return to Jacob a quadruple dose of his own duplicity. Jacob's prior sins are about to come home to roost. God will use Laban to give Jacob a whipping. An important Bible principle is well articulated in Obadiah 15. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your reprisal shall return upon your own head. Turn in your own time to passages like Psalm 7:16, Joel 3:7, Nehemiah 4:4, Revelation 18:6 for confirmation of this important Bible principle. Verse 15. Then Laban said to Jacob, Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be? Laban is about 5 steps ahead of Jacob. He knows exactly what's on Jacob's mind. He can see the way he looks at Rachel. Plus, he also knows the chosen line of Abraham is doubly blessed by Yahweh. No doubt, Jacob had spent the last month regaling Laban with tales of his father and grandfather, and the great blessings and wealth Yahweh delivered to his family, and how he'd won, or stolen, the firstborn blessings of his father. How he had usurped Esau's birthright of the Abrahamic covenant. And almost certainly Jacob wouldn't have kept secret his Bethel experience and promises from God. Laban wants Jacob to stay with him permanently so he can live in the reflected glory of Yahweh. And he has to marry his daughters to someone. Why not Jacob? Easily the most eligible bachelor throughout the lands. Verse 16. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate. This could be a euphemistic way of saying Leah was ugly. She assaulted your eyes to look at her. But more likely, it's a more literal description. She just didn't have pretty eyes. Leah had dull eyes, no sparkle in her eyes. In direct contrast to Leah, Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Rachel's eyes sparkled. In fact, everything about Rachel sparkled. She was beautiful. All eyes turned to Rachel when she walked into a room. She was one of those rare women who light up a room when they enter. Wow, beautiful of form and appearance. Laban could see Jacob was love-struck by Rachel, just like the other boys around town. He knows Jacob will ask for her hand in marriage as wages for his service. And Laban's already plotting how he can lock Jacob in. He has no intention of ever letting Jacob leave. Verse 18. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. Clearly, Jacob's not willing to risk refusal. And over the top 7 years betrays Jacob's zeal. Laban will shrewdly exploit this eagerness. Jacob should have been more careful with the contract fine print. At this point, Jacob has little clue just how devious Uncle Laban is. Laban will honour this agreement, but he'll masterfully include some small print that Jacob doesn't see coming. Verse 19, and Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to another man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Jacob's waited 77 years to find a wife. What's another 7 years when you find true love and a beauty like Rachel? 7 years was like only a few days to him. It's also very likely Rachel was still a teenager. There's certainly a huge age difference between Jacob and Rachel. True love is willing to wait, but lust won't wait. Love is patient. Lust is urgent. Love says when the time is right. Lust says right now. Love understands. Lust pressures. Love comes without demands. Lust is demanding and insistent. If you're in a relationship, hopefully you can quickly spot the difference between love and lust. Men will use the lure of love to satisfy their lust. Women will cave into lust in pursuit of love. Verse 21, then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her." And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob and went into her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came to pass in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban, in this grand switcheroo, makes Harry Houdini look like an amateur. Laban, whose name means white, the ultimate blank slate, the empty man, is a master deceiver. I can't tell you exactly how he pulled it off, but I suspect strong alcohol at the party was prime ingredient 1. A dark room without candles was ingredient 2. A willing accomplice in Leah, ingredient 3. An excellent bridal veil, ingredient 4. An instruction to Leah to keep bedtime talk to a minimum, ingredient 5. And ingredient 6, a dazzling secret dose of Laban panache. And with this night complete, Jacob's sin had returned upon his own head. Jacob thought he'd got away with deceiving his blind father, the second-born, pretending to be the firstborn. But God permits Laban as judgment to use the blinding darkness to trick Jacob that his firstborn was the second-born. Leah's name means wearied or hardship, and to the Hebrew ear her name sounded like wild cow. So rather than receiving the beautiful young ewe, Jacob's prior sinfulness results in him receiving the wearied wild cow. Verse 26, and Laban said, "It must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn." And as the empty-hearted Laban, the old deceiver, emphasized the word firstborn, I think Jacob would have been cut to the heart, knowing that Laban had returned to him the evil he committed against his brother and father. Maybe Jacob had even boasted to Laban about his deception to receive his firstborn brother's blessing. Verse 27, fulfill her week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another 7 years. With this night consummated, Laban has now secured another 7 years' labour from Jacob. And in verse 27, we have the keys to unlocking the mystery of the most important prophetic chapter in the Bible. Daniel 9 is the backbone of Bible prophecy. The simple phrase, fulfill her week in verse 27, is clearly code or shorthand for 7 years. So when Gabriel reveals prophecy to Daniel about 70 weeks for the nation Israel, the key to this code is found in Genesis 29:27. The angelic mystery in Daniel 9, 70 weeks means 70 lots of 70 years, or 490 years. Incredible. God hid this code about Israel at the very beginning point of the nation Israel, when Israel first received his 2 wives. Verse 28. Then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. So he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. And Laban gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as a maid. Then Jacob also went into Rachel, and he also loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban still another 7 years. The Daniel 9 angelic code is confirmed for a second time. A week means 7 years. Here, at Israel's very beginning, is the code to unlock the angelic mystery. Gabriel's mystery prophecy that speaks about things to occur to Israel before the final mortal dispensation. It appears Laban compromises with Jacob. He seems to give Rachel as wife straight away, and Jacob serves 7 years in arrears. Rachel's maid's name means trouble, and Jacob taking 2 wives will cause him nothing but trouble. You can't take this history and make a claim that God approves of polygamy. Moses simply records the history. The wrongs of polygamy will quickly bear its fruit through the narrative. An important lesson from the Bible: we reap what we sow. If we practice evil, we'll bear evil fruit. If we walk in God's will, we'll bear good fruit. Jacob came from a family who played favourites, so he'll mirror this behaviour with his 2 wives. He loved Rachel more than poor Leah. This will bear terrible fruits in the near future. Verse 31. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, or son of vision. For she said, the Lord has surely looked on my affliction, therefore now my husband will love me. This is a heartbreaking account of Leah's desperate search for love. She just wants her husband to love her. The joy of becoming a mother is crushed against the heartache of a loveless marriage. She's bearing the fruit of her deception. She only got her man by including herself in her father's dishonest shenanigans. Verse 33. Then she conceived again and bore a son, and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon, or hearing. Her husband doesn't hear, but God hears her. Verse 34. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, now, this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi, or joined. You can feel her heart breaking with the birth of each son. He doesn't love me, but perhaps now, with the birth of Levi, he might at least feel some attachment to me. Verse 35. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, or praise. Then she stopped bearing. And after the birth of her 4th son, she appears to give up on a marriage. My husband doesn't love me. So Leah would focus on praising God. God has shown me nothing but love. God bestows great honour on Leah, the unloved. Messiah would come through Judah, Leah's 4th child. And thus Leah, not Rachel, gives birth to the honoured messianic line. Until our next study, may God richly bless you all.